I'm excited to be here. I'm really excited that you ladies are interested in learning a little bit about technology and innovation. It's something that's really important for the future, and I promise that today we're not going to talk about too much about politics, too much about really even the environment. It's going to be a focus on innovation, finance, and kind of how energy and solar works. And in order to do that, we're going to talk a little bit about the state of the world of how we buy energy today and sort of what our options are as homeowners, voters, et cetera. I am also going to try to be a little bit more interactive where I'm sitting between post-coffee, pre-lunch, so I'm going to try to keep everybody engaged. So just by exercise here, does anybody have solar on their roof? You stand up. Holy cow, that's awesome. Okay. Has anybody looked into solar but didn't do it, but they've researched it? Okay, great. Does anybody have an electric vehicle? Drive an EV? Drive an EV, okay. Hybrid, okay. So a lot of awesome choice in how you choose to consume and how you choose to support the environment and innovation. Does anybody drive a Prius in the sort of 2000 or early adopter for hybrids? Anybody early Prius? Anybody? How about you have a solar home? How do you feel about your choice to go solar?
I can't take full credit.
Take credit. We don't know.
It was when we bought it.
When you bought it?
It was in Sonoma, and it.
Do you like it?
Yes, and actually, I finally got the panels clean.
There you go.
And that really made a big difference in the energy bill.
Production.
And it's very, I highly recommend it.
Good. See, we find that when people do go solar, it's an early adopter cycle. There are, just this year we'll pass about 1 million homeowners in the US with rooftop panels. So that's 0.06% of the US homeowners. So we're really just starting to take off, but people are excited and they like to talk about their experience. So thank you for talking about that. We're going to talk again quickly about energy today, and we won't. This is sort of a thesis course, but we'll just talk a little bit about the state of the world, talk a little bit about how solar works, and specifically my area of real interest is female consumers and why women are so important to talk to about changing the way we think about buying energy. And then finally, just sort of what I consider to be this new energy paradigm where we are actually choosing where we buy energy, something that we haven't really thought about before as consumers at all historically. And I'm also going to use some audio because different voices will keep everybody awake and engaged. So this is about a 2-minute video on climate change.
Is it the last chance to save the planet from climate change?
Tens of thousands of activists warning climate change is destroying the Earth.
Biggest cause in Hollywood is saving the Earth. Climate change and all that.
That's not really the right way to think about it. Earth has gone through immense climate changes many, many times before, in some cases leading to mass extinctions. But life persisted. Mammals evolved from reptiles and primates from mammals. They stood up and walked out of Africa, eventually reaching the corners of every continent. But only after well over 100,000 years of wandering did the real human innovation happen, when 12,000 years ago we stopped foraging and started farming. Agriculture meant villages, cities, society, government, the birth of civilization. But why did it take so long for humans to take control of their food? Well, if you look at this chart of global temperature change going back 100,000 years, you might notice something special about the last 10,000 years. That's when the climate settled into a period of unusual stability. It was on this ledge that human society developed, where reliable seasons fed more and more people, where knowledge accumulated and science began, until eventually inventors created machines that could unleash unimaginable growth and mobility. All they needed was fuel to burn, and they found it in the form of ancient forests, buried under dirt and compacted over 300 million years. With these coal deposits, humans unearthed tons and tons of carbon that had been locked away long before our species appeared. And that's how we began to disrupt the climate that birthed us, the climate that our food systems and infrastructure are built upon. After 10,000 years of temperatures that varied only within about 1 degree Celsius, scientists now say we're on track for 3 degrees of warming by the end of the century if we don't change course. Humans have been around for 0.004% of Earth's history. and of all of human history, the 200,000 years since our species began, we've had agriculture for just 5% of that time. We've had electricity for 0.07% of that time. The simple truth about climate change is that it isn't new to the planet, but civilization is. And here's what's even newer. In the past 100 years, the number of people alive has quadrupled, and thus so has the capacity for suffering. So slowing down climate change isn't about saving the planet, it's about us, about our vulnerability to a level of climate destruction that human civilization has simply never seen before.
That's all I'm going to say about sort of the politically charged phrase climate change and all we'll really talk about there. But I think what's really interesting is reframing the discussion around us. And so what's going on in the climate is what's happening, but what we can do to change our behaviors in a cost-effective, realistic manner is absolutely important as humans. As we just saw, the population has quadrupled, so this effect is only exponentially increasing on humans. So let's talk a little bit about energy today. Where does it come from? 85% of our energy today in 2016 comes from fossil fuels, from coal, from other sort of polluting sources. And that's a grim statistic. We're making headway, but that's where we are today. In the US, this number is 70%. And 40% of all carbon dioxide emissions come from the burning of fossil fuels used to generate electricity at our utility plants. So a real significant piece of where we see pollution comes directly from generating electricity. So just as a snapshot, what are all the sources? There are a lot of things that we can all work on together. What we're going to focus on today really is kind of coal plants and how we create energy. There are certainly many contributors that we as humanity need to address. Okay, so let's talk about something that I think is really interesting, the grid itself. So the source of our energy needs to be improved. The second factor that I think is really important in terms of innovation and technology is the grid. We have not made any change to the way we've generated electricity ever in over 100 years since electricity was created, period. We still get electricity the way it was originally generated, where it goes through a three-part process of generation, transmission, and distribution. Generation meaning the energy is created. It's in a coal plant. It's generated through any number of manners. A utility company generally owns a huge infrastructure. It could even be utility scale solar, but they're generating electricity far, far away from where we're using it in downtown San Francisco. That electricity has to be transmitted through millions and millions of power lines and transceivers and transmission stations with workers and infrastructure and leases and real estate. After we receive the energy in transmission stations around the country, we then have to get it into our neighborhoods. This is the distribution piece of the way we buy electricity. So now we have the wires that we see all around our local communities that also have to be maintained and taken care of by our utility employees. And only then do we flip the light switch and turn electricity on. This worked for 100 plus years, but there has been no innovation at all in energy markets. And I promised I wouldn't be political, but it is interesting that the utilities have a very strong lobbying hand in oil and gas. And so we don't see a need for innovation. It's essentially a monopoly. You move into your house in California, you want power, you pay the bill. And that is really the last entrenched monopoly that we see as consumers. So is this industry ripe for innovation? I really hope so, both in terms of where energy is created and how we get it to our homes. Okay, so the grid's a problem. And to really bring it home, I have an example of, this is a customer that we're working with here in San Francisco. This is her utility bill. You can go home and look at this. On the back of the second page, you'll see your electric charges breakdown. Very few people ever get into this. They just pay their bills, and maybe it's even auto-debited. You don't even look at it. But line by line, generation is $79. Transmission, $13. Distribution, $70. This is exactly the way we buy energy in this old, antiquated way. So one of the things we think about when we think about just solar energy, we think about both where is the energy created? Is it renewable energy? That's great. We can do that with a lot of things, wind, hydro. But also, how is it getting to our homes? Why are we shipping energy all across the United States from static sources far away from where we're actually consuming it? Is it not smarter to build it at your house? Use it at home. Keep it on your home. Why are we paying all this money to support a grid that in and of itself may actually be antiquated? That's a big loaded question, but that's really where we think about. When I think about solar and energy, I don't think just about what creates our energy. I think about how, when I turn the light switch, how did it get to my house? And is that really the most effective way for us to buy power?
How does this relate to electric vehicles, say Tesla? What's the
Yes.
connection there, and how is that energy generated, and is that sustainable?
In short, it is awesome. So what I would consider to be, if Energy 1.0 is what we've done for 150 years, which it's a shame we never got past 1.0, Energy 2.0 might be what we're doing today. We're doing some creative things. We've got some solar, we've got some wind. I think Energy 2.5 or maybe 3.0 is how do we store that and do away completely with our grid? And that is in the way of battery backup and storage. So one of the challenges with solar on your rooftop is it's driven from the sun, which is fantastic, but we're all at work, we're doing what we do during the day. Most of the energy we consume is in the evening, not when we're producing power to be used on our home. So we need to store the power sometime. Or maybe I'm on vacation the month of August and my system's producing and I need to use it in December when the days are shorter. So what the grid has done successfully for distributed electric generation is store our energy. Meaning in the current construct with residential solar, there's a notion of net metering, or I liken it to cell phone rollover minutes, if you remember those days. Whatever you generate on your roof today and you don't use is stored as a credit to you to pull later, 1-to-1. So that's great, that works. But why do we even need the utility grid to hold all that? 2.0 or 3.0 is in storage and in battery backup, where everything you produce on your roof is stored in essentially, I mean, Tesla's doing a great job. What's in a Tesla car turns into something that they've branded as a power wall. There are several companies doing something similar. It's about the size of, I mean, it's smaller than this case here. It goes in your garage or it goes on the back of your house and stores all your energy. You have no more wires and you have all the energy you need to fuel your home. That is the exciting progress, and that is sustainable when you look at adoption over time. The one caveat I would say is this all relies on solar access. So there are homes that live in beautiful shady groves in Marin and in Massachusetts and in wherever you are. And those are not great solar homes because the sun doesn't hit the roof. And so many people live in these beautiful homes and they're not going to cut the trees down because that's why they live there. So solar is not a 100% solution. Period. It's not really designed to be. It's part of the solution. So battery backup will help us be independent and sustain this over time, but it is not, solar paired with battery backup is not the end-all solution for our new energy economy and structure.
What is?
A combination of things. So I think that there are a couple of things that there's going to be rooftop solar, and there's going to be sort of 1 degree more local than your utility company, but not necessarily on your roof. So there's something called community solar or community wind or community biofuel or any type of generation that can be done generally in your community and delivered in a much more effective manner than through hundreds of thousands of miles from the desert in Nevada to our homes here. So I think there's going to be a combination of can I put it in at my own home, whether it's solar or biofuel, or maybe you want to have an algae farm. There will be choice. I also think there's going to be some interesting, so storage is going to be key to all of that, because and we see this when we elect our rates with PG&E. I don't know if you've thought about this, but you can actually choose how you want to pay PG&E. You can choose to pay on what's called time of use, where PG&E sort of rewards us for being thoughtful about when we pull heavy loads, when we run our washing machine, when we run our dishwasher. If we do that at night, we get a lower rate. So by managing some of the load usage, we can handle we can make improvements as to how much energy we need to generate over time, and then store that at home, use your own energy. And then for a lot of people, that's not an option to store your own energy at home. Maybe you live in an apartment, maybe you live under a shady tree, many other reasons. But many factors will come together to basically completely reconstruct, I feel is really important, the way we think about buying energy. And the most analogous industry to us in solar is telecommunications. So this is early in my time. I wasn't paying Ma Bell phone bills. My mom was, but you moved into your home and you paid the telephone company that had essentially bid on that neighborhood, and that's who you paid. And that you didn't say, I don't like the service, or my ex-husband is a worker there and I don't want to buy the stuff from him. Whatever the reason was, you bought it. And that is, a construct that just is so foreign to us now as consumers. We want choice, we want to do research, we want to be able to think about the way we're being treated as a consumer. We're spending our money consciously. And so that whole construct is what I consider this paradigm shift, where energy choice and the way that where we buy our energy. Do we want to pay a premium? Do we want the lowest cost? Do we like the provider? Do they treat us well? Those are going to be really important decisions going forward, and that will be resolved in a bunch of things, including solar, but many other factors. Sort of a bit of a tangent, but
Aren't a lot of the utility companies also stopping their net metering programs?
There is a battle. I have battle scars from not sleeping because I'm a 6-month-old. I have industry battle scars, but as you can imagine, if you are in the last entrenched monopoly in the world, the United States, you are not going to go down without a fight. I promised it wouldn't be political, but it is about the self-interest of the monopolies. They are fighting a really aggressive battle, and the solar industry, and quite honestly, sort of consumer advocacy and consumer advocacy groups are siding kind of with the solar industry, saying, "Hey guys, the jig is up. Open it up to make it competitive, sell the power you want, but we need to allow competition in the marketplace." So in Nevada, specifically, this is where the battle is most sort of heated now. You may have seen the news with a few solar companies. The industry absolutely massively grew. They passed the net metering law that I talked about, saying that you can feed your energy back into the grid, and then they revoked it about 6 months ago. And they said, and they did not grandfather solar customers in. They said retroactively, any solar customer is going to be charged, they're taxed a fee. And they implemented it immediately. And almost overnight, the entire solar industry sort of gathered together and said, this is not okay. Ongoing lawsuit, had to shut up. I mean, I think something like 4,000 jobs were lost in 1 or 2 weeks. So this is a very real issue with solar specifically, the way net metering is handled. I don't think it's going to be, an overnight victory, but I have a bit of an optimistic lens in that, the right thing is usually what happens, and it just doesn't make sense to have monopolies, to have the utility companies dictate what we buy and when we buy and tax us if we want to do something else. Hopefully that's where we end up. That's a great question. We are definitely sort of embroiled in that discussion, the industry.
So where do the utility commissions come into that dialogue?
That's the utility commission essentially advocating on behalf of their constituents. The Public Utilities Commission is sort of saying, well, they're also prone to our politics and our elected government officials who say, guys, and women, leaders, this doesn't make sense. I know we can't just change everything overnight. I know we've got, we don't want to disrupt the infrastructure, but we do want to create innovation. There's got to be a better way. I think what we're seeing, California and PG&E specifically, is very proactive and very, I think, fair in the way they've thought about taking care of the utility and also being open to innovation. What that looks like is, okay, so what's the argument from the utility company is, this is not fair. We have these solar customers who are getting great cheap electricity, and then we have all these other customers who are benefiting from them going solar by paying for the grid maintenance that I talked about. We pay for that in our rates. Our PG&E rates, it's a for-profit company. So when they have to upgrade the grid, our rates go up. And so the utility company is saying, when the rates go up, it's not fair. That burden is borne by everybody for the solar customers. So they're saying, hey, can our solar customers pay a small amount to cover the grid infrastructure? And okay, so the argument and trying to get to an agreement says sure, but let's make that a fair number. So what happened in Arizona is it was a egregious. It was $50 a month. So that's all your electricity savings. It basically takes the entire solar market off the radar. It doesn't make any sense. So what makes more sense? $3.50, $4. If at scale that it's not particularly prohibitive to a ratepayer, but it allows the utility company to be able to take care of the grid. So I think the PUC is pulled both by legislators and being fair to our consumers, and also the constituents that they've been working with for 100 years, the utilities. And I hope we'll find sort of a fair solution. This is a good, yeah. So I just talked about the incumbent utility model. It's old. It doesn't make any sense. The construct that I always ask the question, who pays the utility bill in here? I don't know if your husband, okay, you pay your utility bill. And I always ask this question, how did you choose your provider? Do you do a cost-benefit analysis?
I'm also in Portland, Oregon, because I trees and a cedar shape.
No.
And so I have to use.
You have to use it, yeah.
Comes in.
But I think the interesting thing that people don't think about is we've just never thought that it should be our choice. So when I say, how'd you choose your utility provider? Most people are like, what do you mean, how did I choose my utility? I like to use power. And I say, woof, wow, how did you choose your cable provider? Well, there's AT&T, there's Verizon or whatever. Or how'd you choose your cell phone provider? People say, I like the data minutes or whatever it is. But when you flip that construct and say kilowatt hours are the same thing as cell phone minutes and data packages, we as consumers deserve to choose. And maybe I will choose PG&E, and maybe I won't choose PG. Maybe I'll do solar, maybe I won't. But the most exciting innovation from my perspective in this industry, in the energy industry, is this paradigm shift that consumers should choose.
Well, it's okay, but apart from solar, which is new on the market for 20, 25 years,
Yeah.
you didn't have an option.
You did not.
If you wanted to flip the lights on, you went to PG&E. Yeah,
So there are not a lot.
In San Francisco, it's PG&E.
There are not.
Southern
Yeah.
California Edison. You don't have a choice.
There are not. I think there's a couple places that we.
Public utility.
Yeah. There's a couple places we need to innovate. One is more viable choices. Rooftop solar works for a percentage of the population, but not everybody. There are many other constructs. In Texas, for example, utility it's what's called decentralized, and you buy one-year contracts, and you choose. It is a decentralized utility. When you move into your home, you have 30 providers, and you click a box, and you pay the bill to them, and you can change it every year. Now, you don't know where the energy comes from. It's just it's a different construct, but you have choice. So you could choose to pay a premium for a one-year energy contract with a company that guarantees that 75% of the electricity is generated from renewables. You can click that box. So that's one construct that is active today in about 10 states in the U.S. Pennsylvania, Delaware, several East Coast states, Ohio, Texas, where you actually can choose. Not the case in California. It's not the case. You move into your home, you pay PG&E, basically. So I absolutely agree that there needs to be more choice. And the battle before that, or in tandem to that, is allowing there to be choice. Getting that on the table with the utilities, that this is actually the way that consumers deserve to power their homes. You know what? They invested in a lot of rooftop solar companies trying to figure out, okay, is this an option I should allow people? You move into your home, do you want me to install rooftop solar on your roof? And you pay me for that. Because when you think about sort of the solar cities, the Sunruns, Sungevities, we see their cars and ads, that's what they do. They finance these systems for 20 years. They make money. It's very profitable. It could be great for PG&E. Is that something that they could do? So I think there is a lot of opportunity for creative work that a utility could come out on top and say, we're progressive, we're allowing choice, and we're making money. But that's change, and the thing they're doing.
Communities done that? I know there are large solar arrays in parts of the country.
Yeah, so a couple things on large solar arrays. There's something called community solar. There's a notion where if I can't have solar, I live in an apartment complex, or there's shade everywhere. My community and I will go together, and there's a plot of land down the road, and we're going to build a 20 megawatt system, bigger than any of us need, and we're going to meter it separately, and we're all going to get our own power from our community garden. That is viable meaning, really something you can choose that actually works in Minnesota, in New York, and Massachusetts, sort of coming online. So I think things like that will continue. Colorado as well will continue to happen. And also utility companies are doing a lot of utility scale solar. So it doesn't solve the grid issue. We're still pumping energy from really far away to our house, but we're getting it from renewable sources.
I've read that there will be a mandate where any new houses in San Francisco.
It was just passed.
Right.
Yeah,
How will that?
yeah.
10 stories or lower.
10 stories or lower, starting in 2017, I think, all new construction must have solar. I think that does a couple things. Yeah. I think it's a great start. One of the challenges is then still on the grid. So, and this is a bit of a wormhole, but in Hawaii, we look in the industry at Hawaii as the proxy for the rest of the world, basically. Utility prices in Hawaii are higher than they are. You got to get. It's an island. It's normally $1,000 a month to power your home regularly. 36 cents a kilowatt hour. Our rate is tiered, but an average of 24 cents. Egregious energy. People are super motivated to go solar because they're paying so much money. What happens? We talked about the construct. All these people all of a sudden are feeding energy into the grid, which is something that the grid had never been prepared for, an influx of load, and just bringing down the transformers. Don't work. So what happened in Hawaii is the transceivers in certain areas got shut down. If you were an early mover and you went solar before the transceiver was receiving 30% of electricity, great, you got solar. If you were the 31st person who wanted to be approved to go solar with the local utility, it was rejected because physically the grid could not receive that influx of load at noon on July 10th when the day is just beaming. So I think the requirement is great because it makes us be creative and be thoughtful about renewable energy and energy choice. I think it also introduces a bit of a challenge in logistically, not a bit, a real challenge in terms of what happens when we're all feeding energy into an old grid that's never been upgraded at all. And I think what you will see then is we need to upgrade the transformers, which then we pay for, so there's a bigger conversation that we need to have around how this is actually the net benefit to homeowners. So yeah, I have renewable energy, it's cheaper, it's great. Also, PG&E has to upgrade all of the transformers in the area, which comes through to me as a ratepayer. So I think there's work to do, and I don't mean that to be negative, but the reality of just putting solar everywhere also needs a step back from a infrastructure standpoint. And I'm going to go quickly through this because I did want to show you kind of what it means to go solar now, which I think about 75% of the people I talk to have it a little bit wrong. I want to demystify a little bit. We hear all these ads and see billboards about leasing and free and tax credit, and people just don't. We talked to the last session about analysis paralysis, and I talked to so many people say, I've totally thought about solar, and I just say, great, do you have it? And they say, no. What happened? And they just say, oh, I just don't know. It was just so confusing, and I heard this guy, and then I had another guy. I'm just too busy. God, that is a problem. How can we get through that noise? So I do want to talk a little bit about what solar is. Very quickly, these are some of the renewable energy sources that we see. Hydro, biomass, algae, creative things happening. Again, in terms of what's the big solution, it's not just solar. Absolutely not. It's a lot of different things that are all going to work together to really improve the way that we generate electricity. What is solar energy? So here, this is another thing we talk about. I talk about rooftop solar. It goes on, it's right here. But the reality is this is a community garden, a real community garden in New Hampshire, where a group got together and bought it, and they pay themselves and get electricity. This is commercial scale solar. So this is the Walmarts, the Ikeas, the Safeways saying we're going to generate our own power. And this is a little bit different than rooftop solar because they have a different rate structure than we do. They pay like 6 cents a kilowatt hour, and we pay like 24 cents. So it's a bit different. And then, of course, utility scale solar, where the utility company says, oh, okay, instead of a coal plant, I'm just going to build a huge solar plant in the middle of the desert, pump energy all day, but I still have to get it to your house, but at least it's renewable. So just to give you a little bit of a landscape, when we talk about solar, this is kind of where we are in the US today. and also, I don't want to confuse you, but this is like when someone says, I know someone in solar, it's like saying I know someone in finance. I'm like, what does that mean? Are you a banker? Are you a financier? Are you in investments? Do you install? So in solar, there are manufacturers, there are financiers, there are installers, there are service providers, there are ongoing providers who come clean your panels when they're dirty. So this is turning into and developing into quite a robust ecosystem. And so when you think about solar and you hear different companies, just know that they're not all the same, right? There's a manufacturer here and there's a service provider here. So there's a lot going on, which is great, a lot of innovation in the industry. I'm going to skip, so for those of you that have time and are sort of interested in this, Al Gore, just about a month and a half ago at the TEDx in Vancouver, had a standing ovation, one of the most broadly watched addresses on climate change, and specifically there are 4 minutes about solar. I actually do have time. Do you guys want to, is that okay? Do you want to see it or ask questions? It's actually really interesting. He's more articulate than I, which is good because he's in politics and I'm in solar.
With solar, the news is even more exciting. The best projections 14 years ago were that we would install 1 gigawatt per year by 2010. When 2010 came around, we beat that mark by 17 times over. Last year, we beat it by 58 times over. This year, we're on track to beat it 68 times over. We're going to win this. We are going to prevail. The exponential curve on solar is even steeper and more dramatic. When I came to this stage 10 years ago, this is where it was. We have seen a revolutionary breakthrough in the emergence of these exponential curves. And the cost has come down 10% per year for 30 years, and it's continuing to come down. Now, the business community has certainly noticed this because it's crossing the grid parity point. Cheaper. Solar penetration rates are beginning to rise. Grid parity is understood as that line, that threshold, below which renewable electricity is cheaper than electricity from burning fossil fuels. That threshold is a little bit like the difference between 32 degrees Fahrenheit and 33 degrees Fahrenheit, or 0 and 1 Celsius. It's a difference of more than 1 degree. It's the difference between ice and water. And in markets, it's the difference between markets that are frozen up and liquid flows of capital into new opportunities for investment. This is the biggest new business opportunity in the history of the world, and 2/3 of it is in the private sector. We are seeing an explosion of new investment. Starting in 2010, investments globally in renewable electricity generation surpassed fossils. The gap has been growing ever since. The projections for the future are even more dramatic, even though fossil energy is now still subsidized at a rate 40 times larger than renewables. And by the way, if you add the projections for nuclear on here, and particularly if you assume that the work many are doing to try to break through to safer and more acceptable, more affordable forms of nuclear, this could change even more dramatically. So is there any precedent for such a rapid adoption of a new technology? Well, there are many, but let's look at cell phones. In 1980, AT&T, then Ma Bell, commissioned McKinsey to do a global market survey of those clunky new mobile phones that appeared then. How many can we sell by the year 2000, they asked. McKinsey came back and said 900,000. And sure enough, when the year 2000 arrived, they did sell 900,000 in the first 3 days. And for the balance of the year, they sold 120 times more. And now there are more cell connections than there are people in the world. So why were they not only wrong, but way wrong? I've asked that question myself. And I think the answer is in 3 parts. First, the cost came down much faster than anybody expected, even as the quality went up. And low-income countries, places that did not have a landline grid, they leapfrogged to the new technology. The big expansion has been in the developing countries. So what about the electricity grids in the developing world? Well, not so hot. And in many areas, they don't exist. There are more people without any electricity at all in India than the entire population of the United States of America. So now we're getting this. Solar panels on grass huts and new business models that make it affordable. Mohammed Yunus financed this one in Bangladesh with microcredit. This is a village market. Bangladesh is now the fastest deploying country in the world, 2 systems per minute on average, night and day. And we have all we need. Enough energy from the sun comes to the earth every hour. supply the full world's energy needs for an entire year. It's actually a little bit less than an hour. So the answer to the second question, can we change, is clearly yes. And it's an ever firmer yes.
So a lot of good points in there. Super exciting. We've done a lot of work. I think what's really important to think about is this notion of grid parity. Some of us we have the opportunity to make choices with our wallets because we care about the product. We shop at Whole Foods because it's important to us to get good quality food for our small babies who we don't want to have pesticide from the skin of the peach, and that's important to me. But most of America does not make decisions that way. Most of the world doesn't make decisions that way. They make it, yes, if they were given the choice and the one on the right is $4 and the one on the left is $4, they'll choose the better decision, but you don't have the luxury of choosing the premium product all the time. And so what's absolutely crucial for adoption of new energy technology is that it is cost effective, period. So a lot of the innovation that we've seen, Bloombox, we live in the hotbed. This is where clean tech happens in the world, right here, just down the road. And the Bloombox that was created, 7 or so years ago, fantastic, great technology, just can't get cost effective. Some people are gonna buy it, but most homeowners aren't gonna put $10,000 down to maybe save a little bit of money. So when Al Gore talked about grid parity, the decline in manufacturing costs has absolutely made the adoption of solar what it is today. We have a lot of work to do. This is a quick depiction of solar growth since 2010. The dark blue line is residential growth, which you see sort of sharply increasing. Medium blue, commercial, and then utility scale. You see these big jumps when a huge project comes online, puts a bunch of power in. So that's kind of, we've seen just generally an uptick. We see, what I think is really interesting is this residential line is where I really focus on. Will homeowners, when we go home, will we make change in our life with what we do, the way we buy power? And this is a chart that I think underscores why that change is happening. Third-party owned versus direct owned. This is in the state of Nevada after net metering was allowed and solar could come into the market about 2 years ago. We saw, before net metering, before what's called third-party ownership, we may have heard of it as leasing. People bought solar at a small scale. They had to write checks for it. It's $20,000, it's $10,000 based on the size of the system. These are the sort of premium disposable income buyers. This happens when we're saving money. 92% of the systems that were sold just in the last 6 months were through a financed model, which is that grid parity model where it is no cost premium for me to switch my source of electricity. And the construct is something called a PPA, or a power purchase agreement. This is the way that we buy electricity in the US today. I have a PPA with PG&E. Well, I have solar as well, but customers have PPAs. It's a power purchase agreement. I agree to purchase power from the utility. They essentially send me a contract that says, I'm going to charge you this much, you're going to buy it, I'm going to give you power. And that's the solar industry in 2007 said, why can't we do that? Why can't we monetize, instead of a several $billion power plant in the middle of the desert, why can't I do 100,000 4-kilowatt homes, monetize that with the same banks and the same tax equity? Why can't that work and sell PPAs that way? And that's exactly what they did. So that's what a PPA is. We see this mass adoption starting in around 2008 of solar, where people could switch to solar for no cost and save money today. So I'm driving down the street, there's a Chevron on my right and a Shell on my left. This one's $1.30 and this one's $1.29. I'm going to that one. So that's when solar really became viable and a mass adoption product. I used to run the programs across the US that sold at the Home Depot. So my customers did not have disposable income. They're doing home improvement projects. They go solar because it saves money so they can do something else. So I wanted to show you a little bit about what a PPA looks like. So this is an actual example of a customer that's just signed up with us, with my company, and it's through Sunrun. So Sunrun, SolarCity, Sungevity, there are many great companies that offer residential solar PPAs. The construct is you pay, in the Bay Area, about 27.5 or 28 cents a kilowatt hour today. I'm going to, for no upfront cost, I'll finance the installation of the system for you, just like the power plant does for PG&E. And I'm going to sell you that power for 15 cents, period. Do you want to do it? Sure. When I sell this, I say, but I I don't know why you wouldn't want to do that, especially if you're making if you're making a financial decision here. I'm just offering you the same thing for lower cost. Go ahead.
Reliability. I don't trust. I don't know.
Totally, which is why a PPA, it is just like PG&E. I mean, so PG&E, they could be a rolling blackout, and that's a bigger issue. But on general, the uptime is 99% with PG&E with our power.
Right.
That's what they report. To be discussed, but similar with solar. So they have to give you power, and the benefit of this question in the back around storage versus grid. So why we like net metering in the solar industry and being tied to the grid is for that reason. If my solar system stops producing, the neighbor kid hits 50 softballs up there, or someone steals it, or whatever happens, it just stops producing. I'm still tied to the grid, and I can buy PG&E power. Nothing changes. My dishwasher doesn't stop running. Everything's fine. I just start buying power from someplace else. It's a rolling sort of purchasing agreement. So that's kind of how that works. But I did want to just describe, this is what people in, I used to sell in Staten Island. This is what they buy. It's cheaper power. It sounds great. Someone else is in charge of it. Same way as the utility. Someone else is in charge of maintaining it, taking care of it. I buy power for a lower price. This is a PPA. And lease, also referred to as lease, generally interchangeably, some legal differences, but that's how it works. Okay, and it's a 20-year term, period. That's standard. And when I get someone who pushes on that, I say, "What's your term with PG&E?" It's infinity. I mean, there's no end. I have no other choice. So this is, yes, you have to be thoughtful about your energy choice, but this is kind of how the way PPA works. Okay. So we also talk a little bit when we talk about solar about the way we buy it in California is tiered rate structure. You should know that in terms of sort of essentially taxing heavy users. And in California, we want to design solar systems so that we offset all the high tiers of power and the subsidized low, this is for a maximum financial return. The subsidized lowest tier of power you do buy from PG&E, it is subsidized for low income and elderly, et cetera. So in California, you'll generally try to offset these high tiers of power and buy the lowest tier from PG&E. This is what that looks like. This blue line is your production of your solar system, right? The summer, it produces more, longer days. Winter produces less, and you're all the time storing credits for yourself to use. Yep.
How does that affect, because I'm hearing a lot of noise in the real estate world with pools.
Yeah.
We find that a lot of people go in and solar, and then they're disappointed because it's not in the pool as they anticipated.
Two separate things. So there's something called solar thermal, which is a pool heater. You put it on your roof and it goes directly to your pool. It doesn't go into your main grid. And that is a totally separate system, and that's where I don't want to sort of speak ill of that piece of the business. There's a lot of stuff that works, but the technology is not great, and there has been sort of a higher rate of downtime with that method of going solar. The other option is just to have regular PV photovoltaic panels on your roof that goes to your main panel, and you heat you do whatever you do with your pool through your regular household electricity. So that is unaffected because you're just buying power from the grid. It's just the same as you do today, whether or not the electricity generated on your roof or generated at PG&E, it feels the same at your house. What doesn't feel the same is the solar thermal option, which is specifically a pool heater PV panel, goes on your roof, and literally the heat goes straight into your pool. More moving parts, not as reliable.
So there's no one out there right now that's doing a great job in that.
Maybe there are. I don't know. I don't know anybody that's really doing a great job.
Yeah, no,
but
I haven't found any.
no, yeah. So yeah.
So Paige, one of the complaints I hear about from people who are more aesthetic than I am is they're just plain ugly.
Yeah.
And I've heard about they're starting to think about making them look like slate tiles and things like that.
They do. Yeah.
Where are we in terms of technology development to actually make this a more attractive option?
Yes. I would add one thing that I like to say is in Japan, there is a trend where people are putting cardboard panels on their roof for status that are not actually panels. So beauty's in the eye of the beholder. In Japan, they have cardboard panels to get the street cred. So yes, there are, they're called built-in photovoltaics, BIPV. They look like shingles. They are about 1/100th as efficient as PV panels. So you can absolutely install them. They look fantastic and smoking hot, and you'll get very little power. So it's a little bit more of a design aesthetic thing than actual output and efficacy for your home. Maybe that will increase, but we have seen almost no improvement in the efficiency. Part of the reason is the conductiveness. I mean, so solar panels themselves need airflow to create electricity, and when you smash them on the roof as a shingle or a panel, you remove any of that airflow, and it's just really hard to get a lot of productivity. So I think that I will say the old panels that were silver rimmed with blue kind of background, those are pretty much dead. They use them in big solar farms. This image, this is what you're seeing today. They're black on black, and they're called monocrystalline. So if you think I think they look better. If you think they look better, that's kind of where we are in terms of aesthetic. But that's a real concern. People who care about their electricity bill more than and if it's on the back of their home, maybe they don't care as much, but something that will remain to sort of be seen. Yeah.
As a homeowner, I get maybe 4 or 5 calls a week of people.
Apologies. Sure. Yeah.
And I don't know one company from another. I'm interested.
Yep.
And how do you discern one company from another, or who's called about what?
That's a really hard question. That's why I quit my day job to start a company, because there are a bunch of ways to go solar. You can own, you can lease, someone might knock on your door. I think you can talk to me. I'm here to be a resource to you. If I didn't know an energy expert, I would probably do a quick Google search before I fell to the person who just happened to catch me. Me either. I don't like them on my door either. Yeah. So this is why when I ask, totally, I can. So that's kind of my company does. I stepped away. I was at a solar leasing company, the 20th employee, the IPO, and everything was great. And I started this company that I work at now as a broker. So I partner with all the top leasing companies and installation companies, and my sales team they're compensated on finding the right model. So I don't really care if you go with, I do care, I want you to be happy, but if Solar City is right for you, or Sunrun, or the local guy down the street who you know, but I'm gonna vet them for you. So I think you'll probably, hopefully not too many, don't tell anybody about my business model, but that's what I'm doing. I'm the only ones out there doing that. But I think you'll see more services like that, because it is almost like a mortgage where here's what I want, can you do the shopping for me? And what we were trying to focus on was the 69% of people who say, I thought about solar and never did anything. Okay, how can I meet you? Where can I help you? How can I demystify this for you? So that kind of broker or advisor model is starting to pop up a bit. Otherwise, I wish, it's a lot, and they are incessant. It must mean you have a good home for solar, but where to start is really tough. I think.
The calls are like the ones that I get for, we're calling about your Windows PC, you want to get that, I don't have it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I get those calls all the time too.
My apologies. We are ruthless salespeople. I think I can help you here, and I'm trying to think if we hadn't had this meeting, what would be your best approach? I think, like an Angie's List or something like that. Or the number one thing in solar is, you had mentioned you had a good experience. We see massive referral numbers, because if you happen to catch someone while you were getting your nails done or something, and they had solar, or you drove, my mom in her neighborhood, when she sees someone with solar, she asks who did it, did they like it? So that's what I would do. If there's someone that you know in your neighborhood, I would just say, did you like who did that? I mean, I hope you ask me, but for other people, I think that's a really great way to find out the truth. And I'll quickly just go through this. So when you go solar, here's what you can expect now. 2008, when I started, we used to drive to everyone's house, and I carried dog treats in my pocket, and we talked to the homeowner, and we did the whole thing. Now we pull up your roof on Google Earth. We can get really great satellite images for free. We can design a system remotely. We look at your utility bill to make sure it's the right size. You don't want a system too big. And then you get a 3D sort of interactive design that tells you how it's going to look. You can provide commentary on where you want the panels, et cetera. Okay, so I talked a little bit about sort of the paradigm shift on why some technology works and why it doesn't. Does anybody want to indulge me and tell me what these two things are?
iPods?
Both iPods?
No, I don't know what that is.
Exactly, you don't know what it is. This is an MP3 player. Does anybody remember what those were called? This was actually where the technology that the iPod was created. It is an MP3 player. The miss here, the reason we don't know what this is because they forgot to market it. They told us they had an MP3 player, and we said, I don't care. Apple said, do you want music and fun in your pocket? And we said, yes, oh my God. And we all bought iPods. And we don't see these, we don't even know what they are. We call them both iPods. And they're not iPods. So this is how I think about solar as well. Like, you guys have heard of solar, you've seen them, but you didn't think about what that really meant. So the conversation with consumers is also part of the energy paradigm shift. Why should I go from PV panels, the MP3 player, to, gosh, a better way to buy energy? Freedom, independence, a smarter innovation. And that's something that's really important in our industry. And I'll wrap up here just telling you why I think women are so important to this. I quit my job and started a company focusing on this discussion because, as it turns out, women are soon to really, really rule the world. We are the largest emerging economy. The combined female economy is $13 billion. That is greater than the combined economy of India and China, the women. So we are doing this not because it feels good to talk to women and we like to get our nails done. It is smart business to talk to women. This is where the money is, okay? So women should know about this. We're going to control 2/3 of consumer wealth over the next decade and be the beneficiaries of the largest transference of wealth in our country's history ever, period. And we just talked about that this morning, and we'll talk about it again, that whether it's our husbands, whether it's because we worked, we have saved, and we have a lot of, the proverbial women have a lot of income at their disposal. 40% of couples, women earns more than her partner. And in another third, they earn the same. And finally, 50+ American women are the healthiest, wealthiest, and most active generation of women ever in our history. It's awesome. So why are we not talking to them? So in my mind, I don't talk to women because I am a woman and I think it's fun, which I do, and to have wine and talk about smart things. It's just smart business. This is where the people are. This is where the money is. Women account for 85% of consumer purchases, including everything from autos to healthcare. 75% of women identify themselves as the primary shopper for their household. So if I'm trying to change the way you buy something, I should be talking to you. It starts with you, and then maybe it goes to your husband or someone else or whatever it does, but you identify as the primary shopper. 93% say they have significant influence in financial services or where they spend their money, and the annual US mom buying power is over $2 trillion. So this is a huge thing. And then on the sustainability piece, I touched on sort of whole foods, but women as sort of caregivers and sort of sensitive futurists, I think about making choices for the future and for their family, and energy fits squarely into that. It fits into saving money, but it also fits into sustainable future and better energy sources. So we're also more active in referrals and talking to our friends. So this is why I think the energy paradigm is really important. I think simplifying solar is important. And I think this room, the way we talk to our friends, the way my industry, the solar energy and industry and the energy industry talks to you and makes it less annoying when your phone rings all day, is absolutely imperative to the adoption of clean energy. And that's what, I quit my day job and started a company to try to make that conversation more interesting. And I hope that you demand that as consumers. I think I have, like 1 minute for questions, but hopefully we had a good, lively, yes?
Is San Francisco a viable area? I mean, I know the outlying areas have more sun, so
Yeah.
we're not right here.
It's awesome. The only issue is the amount of roof space sometimes because, we don't have big ranch homes, or maybe you do in Pacific Heights, but we generally have smaller homes. The actual weather sort of patterns, and even out in the outer Sunset where it's foggy, it's when you get sunburnt on those foggy beach days, it's the same thing with your panels. Germany is one of the highest producing solar industries in the world, and they're north and have terrible weather. So we actually see just fine productivity, and San Francisco is a fantastic market because of how much we pay for power. So you can save a lot of money. Unfortunately, we pay so much that you can save a lot.
So can the panels go on a flat roof?
They can. You rack them up.
And are they heavy?
They're not heavy. So distributed over sort of the weight, it's less than the weight of having one guy on your roof installing the panels.
Thank you.
Yes.
If you're planning on keeping your home for a long period of time,
Yeah.
Are you better off going ahead and buying your own panels and getting your Tesla power, whatever that thing is,
Yeah.
and not being tied to the grid and obviously there's the risk of something malfunctioning and not having power maybe, but
I
aren't you
think
better off financially in the end doing that?
so. The best financial ROI for if you have disposable income is to own the panels. Take the tax credit. I didn't really touch on that, but there is a 30% investment tax credit, which was just extended in December through to 2020. Take the tax credit, own the equipment, take all the benefits. The piece that I sort of go back and forth about is, not much happen. The system doesn't usually break. There's only one part that has moving components, and that's the inverter, which changes the electricity from DC to AC. That's really the only thing that you'll ever, over the 20 or 30 or 40 years, have any issue with. It's about a $5,000 fix, and then has about a 10 to 12 year life. So I think, the best ROI in solar period is owning your system.
And the inverter needs power, right?
The inverter doesn't need power, it's the generator that changes the power. So that's the one thing when you think about maintenance, if you're gonna own it, that you're gonna have an expense there in about 10 to 12 years. But the ROI, leases are great because they help people get into solar and save money. But if you're gonna go solar for investment purposes, or you just don't want the monthly bill from your utility company, so your solar company, own the system, you get all the benefits, and after 20 years, it's all upside, all the power is yours for free. You paid for it already.